We are live, I'm pretty sure, as long as Twitch is loading properly and Streamlabs is working okay. This is Master Mars here. We are doing my part 3 of the first Final Fantasy game. I got it booted up, ready to go. Blind playthrough, first time playing the game. Currently, hour 46 minutes in. I do 1 hour streaming sessions of the game. We're going to get started once again. Double checking, make sure Twitch is working, and we're ready to go, and I'm pretty sure I'm full healed right now. Yep, I am fully healed right now and raring to go. We got several places we can explore. Last I remember, we're trying to find a witch that makes potions and not repeatedly enter the town 50 times. Trying to find a witch that makes potions to make a potion, I assume, to wake the sleeping prince up of this kingdom. We have our ship, and we could sail, or we can wander this continent area to look for any possible dungeon or town thing that would have the witch. There's nothing on this continent other than this city and castle. I'm gonna have to sail and look for where my next goal is. Where the witch is, where the potions are, where the wild things live. But no, gonna be some standard gameplay today. I'll try to think of topics to talk about during the video. It helps having somebody here to talk to or something, but I mean, my viewer count's gonna take a while to take off, so actually there's now showing 5 people here, 2 of which are myself and my bot thing set up that for some reason still counts as a viewer. Streamlabs says to set it up as a separate account, so apparently Twitch still considers that it's a separate account. It's still considered a person there. But for those in the chat right now, if you want any information on my upcoming games, I'm going to be playing all the Final Fantasy games, not including 11 or 14 since they're multiplayer only. And I'm starting with Final Fantasy 1 going up through. 1, 2, and 3 are going to be a blind playthrough for me because I haven't played them before. 4, I know what I'm doing in 4. 5, I know up to a certain extent what to do. And 6, I will know most of it, but I'll be a little rusty. And 7, I know a fair bit. Probably hit a dead zone when it comes to free roaming. Because I'll have to figure out, you know, what levels should I face what bosses. And I don't want to miss any of the characters. I'm not sure if Yuffie and Vincent are missable or not. But as I remember, I was not to either of them in my campaign. I encountered Yuffie and I got to the town where Vincent is, I believe. But then I hadn't played it, and I lost my disc for the longest time and found it broken in a box, like a few years later. Ended up getting a new disc and have it again, and I like playing the original games rather than like constant remakes where they kind of patch out everything or they change things about it. Sometimes I do like the remakes though, like the HD remake of, well, 10-2 for example. There's a remake that has an extra segment at the end of the game. Like, when they actually add extra content for the remakes, it's really nice. But if you're gonna remake an entire game and not add something extra, that's when it gets annoying. So, like, I'm gonna remake an entire video game and just update the graphics a bit, not really change any of the gameplay, and it's gonna be called Dark Souls Remastered, but it's more like Dark Souls detextured when everything looks oily. they didn't really patch much out except for like some duplication glitches. And the game was extremely hackable, and people were actually afraid to play on PC because people were constantly hacking others on the game. Like, straight up stealing their account. Actually, I'm not sure how they did it, but they would basically commandeer your console through Dark Souls. I don't know if they could have stolen Steam accounts or not at the time. But, yeah, as I said, any number between 4 and 15 is not going to be a completely blind playthrough. Most of them I do know what I'm doing, at least for a certain extent. 5 through 9, I haven't played through the entire game, so it's a partial blind playthrough when I get to those. And of course, 1, 2, and 3 are pure blind playthroughs. I've beaten 4, I've beaten 10, I've beaten 10 too, 12, 13, I've 100%ed 13, 2, and nearly 100%ed 13 Lightning Returns. I was one achievement away from 100%ing 15 when it first came out, but the achievement was glitched. It's the one where you get Ignis's cooking skill to max. One of the easiest achievements. It locked me out of it on Xbox, don't know why. That's going for Xbox achievements. With PlayStation it would be trophies. Steam it would be achievements. For my favorite Final Fantasy, it would have to be 12. It had a completely different style of gameplay compared to other Final Fantasies they had made, and I found that they did the system very balanced, because you could actually set up you could swap between what character you use. It was an open map, free roaming game, and they had a system set up that you wouldn't control 2 of the party members, or you could just swap between them. There was a way to set it up so you could just keep swapping between them and setting what they do in pretty fast succession as long as you were good with it. Or you could set up the Gambit System. And with the Gambit System, you were given a few of them to start out with to teach you how to use the system. And with that, they taught you how to use the system with basics. Then you can buy extra commands. So it's like foe at 100% health, 90% health, and it goes all the way down to 10% or something like that. And you can have foe status, whatever, use this, or foe. Basically, you had different ways of targeting the enemy. Foe that is flying, normal attacks have a really low hit rate against flying enemies. So you could set foe flying and have them cast a magic spell. And you could set any spell or attack that they currently were able to use. And you eventually learn how to use all the weapons, armors, spells, and accessories by using the licenses system. And no sense of style. Thank you for the follow, dude. Hope you're enjoying the stream. But with 12, that being my favorite, I thought this system was really good, ahead of its time. It was very easily manageable. It had a good storyline, twists and turns here and there, and it had a lot of extras to the game. I remember grinding through all the... Yo, what's up, No Sense of Style? How are you doing? Playing on PlayStation, by the way. But, continuing my talk about 12, trying to remember what I was going to say. Right, the extras of the game. It had the hunt system, It had special enemies that you had to meet certain conditions to get, known as the rare game system. There was the rare game hunting, and there was a lot of missables in the game. Okay, the missables part was the only thing I didn't really care for, because if you killed certain enemies without getting the items, you'd be locked out of them for that run. Though you didn't really need them to complete the game and its extras. You just had to grind a lot more if you didn't have them. And there was the Zodiac Spear, which, although at first is a missable item the first time you would normally get it, if you hit certain treasure chests, it will lock the Zodiac Spear from being obtained. But later on in the game, there's actually a treasure chest that can give it, and a lot of Final Fantasy fanatics and people who actually know how to hack games figured out that they use a pseudo random number generator and not a pure random number generator. What this means is that it has a pattern to it. It'll generate random numbers in an exact pattern every time, and you can manipulate it. You can do a certain amount of actions to set your numbers to a value that will cause treasure chests to spawn for you. Essentially what you do is you follow the guides online if you don't already know how to do it, and how it's supposed to start out is when you load in your save, you're probably near the area where the treasure chest is going to spawn at. And to get it to spawn, you basically take off the equipment from your characters and make sure that when they attack, which you need them to attack, you need them to do 0 damage to your character. And attacking, eventually you'll reach a time when they'll do a combo attack. Certain combos mean certain patterns. And then there is the guide will tell you how to switch from one pattern to another. Some patterns are easier to predict and you can immediately go and spawn and get the treasure item. Actually, I don't remember, it's not spawning the treasure chest, it's getting the item out of the treasure chest. To spawn the treasure chest, you have to go 3 tiles away, 3 tiles back, repeatedly until it respawns or something similar to that. As for getting the item in the chest, you have to manipulate the pseudo RNG system. And 12 also just had a lot of throwbacks to things. They had plenty of equipment, different ways you could build the characters, varied races. They literally one of the most diverse Final Fantasy games you can get. You had the Bonga, which kind of like a dog-like people. You had the Sikhs or Siegs, which are like a much more big-bodied dog-like person. There was, of course, Mughals. Mughals are in almost every Final Fantasy game. It's basically one of the 2 mascots, the other being Chocobos. You had the Vera, which were like a bunny girl race with a really extended lifetime that were normally excluded in a forest that they kept protected, but some of them would venture out into like the actual world. You also had, of course, humans, and trying to remember all of them. Pretty sure I'm missing 1 or 2. There was a sequel made for 12, which was, technically there was multiple sequels, but there was one direct sequel called Revenant Wings, which introduced an aerial race who lived in the skies of the world of Final Fantasy 12, and I forget what they're called, but the game had a ton of different people and a ton of different enemies. trying to remember the alt, if I'm missing any. Well, if I am missing any, feel free to remind me in a future stream or on YouTube in the comments section. Other than that, my second favorite Final Fantasy game is a very tough choice. I really, my mascot Chocolina comes from 13-2 and 13 Lightning Returns. 13-2 and Lightning Returns were both very enjoyable for me, and 13-2 fixed a lot of the problems that 13 had that made it unenjoyable for me. Instead, they introduced a more free roam type thing. You were kind of locked into a path, but not really sort of gameplay. And they added a changeable monster to the third-party slot, which kind of broke some of the limits on your normal characters having to use weapons and stuff to get better. And the Crystarium was a bit more balanced out than it was in 13. And basically, when I seen Chocolina and learned the story about her, I really enjoyed the character. I have a feeling this is the place I'm supposed to go to get the potion. I'd have to say, however, my least, well, with my second favorite, it is a tough choice. 13-2 is up at the top area. 4 is very high on the list as well. I'd have to say 10-2 is also up there. And 10 is up there. 10-2 had a lot of... Basically, you start with the airship, and you can now explore the entire map of 10 without having to wait half the game to do so. And it included a lot of new areas that 10 didn't have. So I really like 10-2. I like the storyline they did of bringing Titus back. The only thing I didn't like about 10-2 was because of 10. At the end of 10, spoiler alert for those who haven't seen the storyline of 10, at the end of the game, Titus decides he wants to jump off the airship because he seems to be slowly fading away. Well, the problem with this storyline is that he may have come from... He came from the past, not from the future. And Sin time traveled him to the future. So, although he was taken there unnaturally, it was still in the future, not the past. Sin was alive the entire time up until him and his group defeated Sin. So he kind of should have been just stuck there normally in the future. Like, if you think of time on that sort of passage. If you think of time happening all at the same time, then yes, he should have phased out entirely, or heck, he should have just disappeared just instantly. He wouldn't have just slowly phased out of existence. What if this bat attacks me? The bat just says key. That's kind of cute. So, I don't know if I'm gonna have to fight anything here, but I am out of heals and need to go back to town. But at least I know where to go now. And I've done a bit of grinding so far here. But essentially what should have happened with Titus is either he would have restabilized in that timeline because he was kind of stuck there, and he should have just stayed on the airship. He wouldn't have disappeared. The other thing is that he was being sucked into the far plane, which is another possible theory for what was going on there. And that no matter where he would have gone, he would have gotten sucked to there somehow. And that kind of might explain why he's given back at the end of 10-2. But, there is a lot of werewolves, and I'm going to get my butt kicked if I fight them. I think they could have ended 10 a little better. And my white mage just died. And I got away. But my white mage just died. And I move. To the right, to the right. Crap. More enemies. So other than that, what I liked about 4 was, even though it was one of the very early Final Fantasies, it had one of my favorite storylines and character cast. Cecil overcoming darkness to become a paladin. He goes from fighting for an evil empire to fighting against the evil empire. Turns traitor on his entire homeland just because he knows they're doing wrong and fights back against it, only to find out that the leader's actually being manipulated by... I'm not exactly sure what Zeromus would classify as. An alien, a super sorcerer that traveled to the moon and kind of fucked the world up and had to be sealed away. Was basically casting his influence on the Emperor, who eventually realized the error of his ways when he got some sense knocked into him. There was a lot of turmoil in it. It made you think that a lot of characters were dying off. It made you have feelings. Like, it is one of the ultimate, like, heartthrobs of Final Fantasies. Like, oh my god, I can't believe I got attached to these characters only for them to turn themselves to stone. Oh my god, he just sacrificed himself by throwing himself into an exploding turret. Oh no, she got sucked into the sea and eaten by a sea monster. The bard got sucked out the sea and was never seen again until we find him in an elven kingdom, very wounded. Oh no, this elf is locking down all our armor, we're doomed. Oh, we're saved by magical bard powers yet again! What is this, Dungeons & Dragons? But no, it was very enjoyable and had by far one of the most interesting storylines I've seen in a Final Fantasy game. So that's why 4 is up there on my list. So basically I have to pick out of those ones, do I go with my mascot and some enjoyable gameplay? Do I go with probably one of the best storylines? Or do I go for another very good storyline with very entertaining and interesting gameplay? Oh, not to mention the laughs in 10-2. The LeBlanc crew is just comical, and they quote Shakespeare. Like, that's just fun. So, it's kind of a toss-up between those three as for my second favorite Final Fantasy game. Now, the disappointing part is my least favorite Final Fantasy game, which actually has a tough competitor right now. My least favorite is 7. Not because of the gameplay, not because, well, because of one or two of the characters. No, mostly just one of the characters. Let's see here. Cloud killed Aerith with a world of super magical healing and stuff, and not having a healer on the party, he thought she was dead, even though she was just barely alive and bleeding out. Dead bodies usually sink, or they usually... It depends on the time of death, whether a dead body floats or not. But a living body will pretty much always sink if they're unconscious. People just don't float. They'll be breathing extremely lightly, and they'll probably be sinking. With a dead body, considering the time elapsed between Sephiroth stabbing her and her being put on the water, the dead body, if she was dead, the lungs would have filled up with air and the body would have started floating, which means her body would just float on the surface if she had been dead at that time. So that major plot hole that they fell into very much just kind of ruined the storyline for me, especially since there was some data miners who found content where Aerith was actually predicted to still be in the game because she has dialogue in parts way after the time that she had died in the game. She was actually supposed to live until whenever in the game because, like, it proved the dialogue there, and they made a change to the story that I just basically disagree with. Other than that, with 7, although it has by far the most amount of free roam and took RPGs to a whole new level with that much free roam, it had too many extras. Like, you could spend half a year grinding away all the extra bosses. Alright. Sensicisle says he finds it interesting to see at which point players choose to suspend their disbelief about 7 and Aerith's death. What exactly do you mean by suspend it? Like, as for me, I mean, Aerith died. I didn't very care for her. I didn't care much about her for a character. But, like, I'm just talking what happens to a dead body when it dies. Like, I'm using factual things against a fictional game that likes to base itself mostly on physics of the real world based on their series, with the exception of magic and aliens. I mean, technically there's still probably aliens out there. It's just they're not gonna be like all these wacky killer giant monster things we're predicting some of them to be out to be. Like, if there's life on other planets, they're gonna have very similar physiologies to humans if they're developed enough to, you know, make space travel. Like, they have to be highly intelligent creatures to make space travel that well. I mean, with Genova, a giant parasite living on a meteor that can also survive in Earth's atmosphere seems likely if the being could develop within a giant meteor, so to say, or on top of a giant meteor and survive without oxygen. Like, it is possible that some sort of life came to existence like that and is hurtling through space. I just think it's highly unlikely that anything like that would ever come and hit the Earth. Because if a meteor that large is carrying a creature like that, it'd have to be large enough not to burn up on impact, make a crater, and have the creature be able to come out of it. And with Genova was rather large at the time, so the meteor must have been pretty big. Like, size of the Earth big. Yes and no to your question there. It is a little silly to you know, say about she wouldn't have died if so-and-so did this or so-and-so did that. My point is, Sephiroth didn't kill her, Cloud did, and it's used as a false announcement, and it bothers me, when in reality, Cloud killed Aerith. Sephiroth just basically fatally wounded her, and she could have been healed if, like, she could have been healed from it because there's magic in that world. But basically, Cloud dealt the final blow to Aerith, not Sephiroth. And that's the plot hole that made me dislike 7. Other than that, I find Cloud to be an insufferable jackass. Okay, so Astos has taken everything from here. I need to get a crown from a cave south of here. And, I have no idea what just happened because I think my capture card just flipped out. Was it just me that seen that weird graphics skip? Might take a point off Pile's rating for their newest capture card. Okay, so I gotta go to a cave. But yeah, I agree with the arguing that Aerith wouldn't have died if so-and-so, blah blah blah. Let's say, oh hey, Cloud or somebody used a Phoenix down on her and healed her up with potions. Like, okay, yeah, that is silly. Like, I'm not gonna argue the fact that she's dead. Like, she died. That they made that the game. There's no way of changing that. You'd have to make an entirely new game called Final Fantasy VII Parallel Universe. Basically a universe where they changed how the storyline went with Aerith. In which case, the extra text that they had after Aerith's death, they could put back into the game. Like, it's stupid to argue that she could've, would've, should've lived, when in fact, no matter what, she died. I'm just gonna argue that it was Cloud that killed her, not Sephiroth in the end. That is also true. Technically, something else could have also happened to her before Cloud put her in the water. Or that, heck, it wasn't just it was a combined effort of things that killed her. So yeah, I can actually also agree to that. It was a good way of thinking. So honestly, I'm gonna say at least 2 people were at fault in Aerith's death. And I'm gonna leave it at that. There is a very, very bad mystery surrounding Aerith's death that I think Square Enix or Squaresoft or somebody should have fixed before the game was released, so there wasn't any ambiguity over the major death of the game. Like, I think they should have fixed that so we didn't have any storyline grievances afterwards that people would argue about for tens of years to come. And now all my characters are being blinded. That is not good for this cave. I need an item to stop darkness condition now. It's intentionally vague. Okay, I do not like how they left it intentionally vague. I can't speak. And I will argue that it needs to be fixed versus you arguing that it does not need to be fixed. But that is one of the few reasons that I really just outright didn't like 7. The other being, like, I love free roam. I don't like having to face a billion level 99 bosses around the map and change strategies constantly to fight each different one. Yeah, Aerith's dead. Like, I accept that completely. She died in the storyline, she stayed dead in the storyline, and then communicated with the party from the Afterworld live stream thing that they have in 7. Harsh Cape, bottom 2nd floor. Which way do we go? Apparently we go into a battle. Green slimes. Oh no, poison! It's gonna kick my butt again. Oh wait, I have antidotes this time. As long as no more than 2 people get poisoned. Oh god, these things are taking 1 point of damage every time I hit them. I guess I have to use magic. Don't have magic there. Okay. Rose has bolt. Let's try bolt. Violet has fire and bolt. I'm gonna try fire. And it's just gonna attack. Burn, slime, burn. Oh god, it didn't die on my hit. That did 8 damage. Okay, one of them have died. That is a good sign. These things seem to be strong, and 1 more spells for Rose. Crud. I don't have any spells left. That's not good. Am I supposed to... Am I just supposed to bulk this thing for 4 damage every turn until it dies just to get rid of it? I don't have any spells for the boss at this place either. Right, time to escape this cave, go back to town, resupply, and try it again. Continuing on with my least favorite Final Fantasies, 15 is a close second. And no, it's not, well, there are several reasons behind that. One is the storyline. I just didn't like it. It was extremely straightforward. There really wasn't any mystery to it. It had weird twists that were kind of unnecessary. Weird statuses happening, things. The ending wasn't very good. It ends up in a showdown. And spoiler alerts. Noctis died, so they kill off the main character, and they kind of leave it very, very ambiguous to what happens after he dies. And I even heard rumors that some of the patches actually ended up affecting the story after the game first came out, because so many people actually didn't like how it went. That's my first problem with 15. The second problem I have with 15 is that it was way too easy, and is still way too easy. So with their system, it has a major flaw that is very exploitable, which is their combat system. And the only way to actually lose is to have all 4 of your party members wiped out. And unless you're playing crazy and fighting level 70 monsters when you're level 5, you're not just gonna outright get wiped out. And yes, I'm being a bit exaggerative there, but like, I'm actually serious. Unless you're fighting something extremely too powerful for you, for your level, you're not going to get wiped out in 15. Noctis is gonna get downed if you're fighting something slightly stronger than you, but he gets downed and can still use items. Like, you don't have to rely on companions using an item for you. You can still use items as Noctis. Like, okay, so he's down, I'm gonna use a potion. Okay, he's back up. I'm gonna use a Phoenix down. He's back up, back up. Like, seriously. You can just buy and spam items in it and prevent yourself from going down. Well, you can go down a billion times and still get back up again. And it's basically like playing the song, I get knocked down, but I get back up again, and you're never gonna keep me down. About 50 times on repeat, and it's fast-forwarded 50 times. So, it's like listening to the song. Basically, you don't get down. You get down, you basically use an item, and you're fine again. And you can keep doing this throughout the entire game and slowly level up and grind. You get experience really easily by basically going out, killing things, doing objectives, whatever you want to do. You can get points by fishing, riding chocobos, etc. It's really easy to level up. You don't even have to be good at combat to win at combat sort of game. And that is the biggest problem I have with this game. Just the difficulty wasn't difficult. What I did love about 15 though, and which is preventing it from taking my least favorite Final Fantasy game, a few things. One, the bestiary and the throwbacks to older Final Fantasy enemies via name is just beautiful. Like Jabberwocky, Bandersnatch, Bombs. They brought back old enemies and had them remade in HD, and I really enjoyed it. Not entirely true, because I keep getting my butt kicked at Final Fantasy 1 here, and I have to keep playing really, really safe not to die. Because I'm very afraid of getting wiped out right now before I get back to town. Technically in all Final Fantasy games, yes, you can safety grind until you're really, really high level and can just murderalize everything. Or at least for 99% of Final Fantasy games. Technically you don't have to be good at the game to beat it. Some of them, however, do require a bit more skill than others. I would like to say that, and I believe it's true. I'm not... I think you'd have to test it more to find that out. What I really liked about Final Fantasy 15, the enemies, of course, with all the names, throwbacks, etc. The second thing I liked is, of course, with modern day graphics, the game looked absolutely beautiful. Like, the detail they put into the game was huge. It was graphically astonishing, and I loved watching cutscenes and fighting enemies and exploring the lands. The map's pretty big, it's basically free roam the entire game. You get to choose what you want to do before going into the main objective, with the exception of having to unlock certain areas and certain things. The game was really just outright beautiful. True, those are just, but strategy, yes, okay. Skill. But the thing is, difficulty isn't necessarily measured on skill. It's measured on a mix of strategy, skill. Like, okay, so my skill is being able to push buttons. But if I'm just pushing buttons and not in any particular order, the game's not really going to go anywhere. Of course, if I push them in specific orders, I get to walk around the map and explore, I get to fight and whatnot. So I can just keep hitting the attack button. But, like, just say I keep hitting only the attack button, I don't use items or magic or anything, my characters are eventually just going to get wiped out after hitting a certain amount of things. So, I mean, you don't necessarily need skill to push buttons, you just push buttons. You need strategy, however, to plan how you're going about the game. Like for Final Fantasy 1 right now, it is pretty straightforward, but I do have to be careful of certain status conditions, because I've already had several party members downed already, and have been close to being wiped out. I'd say at least twice after about almost 3 hours of playing the game. So, there is that. Let's see, I do want to get some new spells. I think I'm going to get Fire 2 for both of these two. And I'm going to buy some items. Well, with 15, the strategy is basically don't die and you can probably make it out of every single fight, or don't have all 4 of your party members. Well, technically that's the same for just about all Final Fantasy games, is don't get your entire party killed. In 15, it's just significantly easier to push buttons to prevent your party from getting killed, because the menus are pretty simplified. Buy some antidotes. I'm gonna buy 8 of these. I'm gonna buy a 10. This gold beetle, the stone. I'm gonna buy 2 more 10s. There, now I have an easy heal. But with 15, the game took significantly less strategy to get through the game intact, alive, and successfully than it did, say Final Fantasy VII, for example. The gameplay in 7 was actually pretty complex when it came to their one system. Forget what it's called. The materia? The things that you attach for abilities was somewhat complex. Those are tarantulas and they're probably going to poison party members. And say it's easier than this one, of course, which is actually giving me trouble compared to some other Final Fantasy games. In this game, poison is a heck of a lot stronger than it is in future games. Like, as soon as I take one step while being poisoned, it automatically does a point of damage to my character. The more, if I don't have an antidote or a way to get rid of it, that basically means taking 50 points of damage before I can get back to a village. And that's just getting back to the village, and then another 20 points trying to get to a shop to get an antidote. So, like, it's a bit harder to keep party members alive in this game than it is to keep them alive in 15. So difficulty curves on that are not entirely just skill-based, they're strategy-based, and sometimes RNG-based, and sometimes RNG being luck-based. Sometimes they're skill-based, sometimes they're strategy-based, sometimes they're luck-based. Not sure, they might be sometimes knowledge-based, say you're playing some puzzle games or something, and you just can't figure out the puzzles for the life of you. You get stuck on a puzzle and can't complete it. Of course, you can always look it up, but if you want to do it yourself, then let's just say a puzzle completely has you stumped and you're not able to complete it. But say other people did figure out the puzzle and were able to complete it. Like, there's different ways to calculate a difficulty curve of the game. Platforming games, for example, although you're just pushing buttons, sometimes you have to you have 1 or 2 frame inputs to make a jump or something, say in Mario. A good example is the super expert levels on Super Mario Maker. the skill-based curve isn't about the skill of pushing buttons, but the timing of how you push the buttons and in what way. If you don't, let's just say you get stuck with a mid-air in Super Mario Maker, if you know what a mid-air is. Essentially what you do is you push the shell under Mario, and he does a jump off of it in mid-air, and that's where it gets the name mid-air. It takes a very specific combination of buttons to do one, and there are weird super expert levels that will require you to do one or multiple mid-airs. For example, a streamer who I like to watch and whose videos I like to watch on YouTube is Ryukar. I mentioned him in my last stream. He plays numerous games. One of the ones he's popular for was Super Mario Maker, and he was beaten in Super Expert by a level that wanted the player to complete 12 mid-airs in a row. He just released a video like 2 days ago, I think, that was him going back to levels that beat him and ended a Super Expert run for him. Well, they're called Super Expert no skips, so you're not allowed to skip the level, but there was one that required him to do 12 mid-airs in a row. Considering he's pretty skilled at Super Mario Maker, and he still has trouble doing more than one mid-air in a row, it goes to say how difficult it is to continuously perform mid-airs, let alone performing at least one of them, because there is such a small frame limit in which you can input the right buttons to do one. And that's where the difficulty spikes there. And essentially, in his newest video, he actually managed to get at least 5 mid-airs in a row out of 12. He just attempted it for the hell of it, just to see how he's progressed, and he's gotten better at Super Mario Maker since, like, I think it was like a year or two ago that level prevented him from completing a Super Expert no skip at the time. And, just shows the difficulty curve there. It's actually 4 minutes until when I normally end my stream, so I might actually memo save for the first time for this run. And, I'm gonna keep going in this cave as far as I can get in 5 minutes. I started like a minute or two late, so I'm going to end a minute or two late. And I'm trying to keep my streams to just an hour right now, because I'm recently coming back to streaming after a hiatus of a few months, because I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do game-wise as a streamer, and I kind of just got blocked for content. And I decided I really wanted to do a marathon of all the Final Fantasy games. I went out and got the games that I didn't have and wanted to play, because Square Enix is my favorite company, and I just love the Final Fantasy games. I also wanted to eventually do all the Dragon Quest games, Dragon Warrior being the first name, and get versions of them that I would be able to stream. I'm not exactly sure if I can get an edition that isn't on a handheld for some of the games, but I know there are a decent amount of them that I could get a copy that I could stream. Especially Dragon Quest VIII by far is the easiest, because that's on PlayStation 2 and I already have it, beat it, and loved it. And there's also Dragon Quest XI, which was semi-recently released in English, because they only had it in Japanese for the longest time. It was one of the ones that took a while to actually get released in English. And I could try doing them as a series at some point too. After my Final Fantasy marathon of games, however, I want to do some other RPGs. I have a couple already lined up on Steam, and I will do them at some point. I'm not sure if I'm gonna have a break in between my marathon of games, or like I may have some days when I'm streaming that I'll do a different game than Final Fantasy, and I'll see how that goes in the future. But first things first, Final Fantasy 1. Game's been fun so far and surprisingly difficult to me. I was expecting it to be decently challenging considering how old the game is, but some of the mechanics like poison kind of shocked me at first. And I do not want to fight these green slimes. I very much do not want to fight these green slimes. I do not want these green slimes and ham. I do not want them Sam I am. Just stop resisting physical damage. I don't want to have to kill you by doing 30 points of damage in all ones. Yeah, these green slimes, man. I don't want to fight them. The fun thing is that my fleeing seems to be working most of the time, and I found a treasure chest instead of a boss. What'd I get? I found a dagger in the treasure chest. Who puts a dagger in a chest? Is my first question. What is so special about an ordinary dagger that you need to take up of a space that is likely 10 times the size of a dagger? You could probably fit 10 daggers inside of an ordinary chest or treasure chest. I just find it kind of funny. Unless the chest in Final Fantasy games are like bags of holding, but they can only hold one item of any kind. But they can hold up to any space of said one item. That would be funny. Now this one I like better. I found 680 gold in the treasure chest, or gil, for this game. I like how different games have different terms for money. It is 701 now. So, I think... Whoa, that is a lot of damage on my white mage, who doesn't have much armor. Not so much on my other characters, but I still think I'm playing from this fight. One failed play. 3 hits. 1 successfully. I like how this game gives you an attempt for the entire party to flee on each character. So the only way not to escape from the battle is if a boss is locking you there, which I'm going to assume they have, it says you won't be able to flee the fight, or if literally all your party members fail to flee. Found a broadsword and 620 gil in a chest. And, I'm gonna heal the party up. So we're gonna do some healing. And we're gonna memo save here. And this is where we're gonna leave off for the stream tonight and for the video. I hope you guys enjoyed me talking about different Final Fantasy games, my favorite ones, my least favorite ones. And, hope you enjoyed the stream, or if you're watching it on YouTube, the video. Data saved temporarily to memo file. Okay, so just double checking that this is saved properly. I can always overwrite the memo file. And that's gonna be it for the stream. We're going to go raid somebody now, so I'm gonna turn off my game. I'm gonna unplug my capture card, and re-plug in my keyboard because, well, in the last video, or in the last stream and video for this series on YouTube, I stated about one of my USB ports being broken, and that I need to get a USB splitter. And because of this, I basically unplugged my keyboard to plug in my capture card. And, Clipper 1 is on, and she's a pretty cool streamer. She's been speedrunning Mega Man 10 and is preparing for SG to Q, or just Games Done Quick. And we're going to visit her if you guys don't mind coming along. She's a pretty cool streamer, and she gifted me a sub recently. I'll post in the chat here quick her emote, if I can find it. There it is. This is her emote, and I think it's adorable, and we're gonna go raid her now. And every viewer left other than me and my bot, so I guess it's just us two. See yas.